This is Mile High.
We have to do it better in order to move people along.
Up, down, inside out.
If you get your mind right, it is not. It is a receiver of thought. Because love is my first technique.
It's now time for the show.
Welcome to the Mile High Podcast. This is your host, Dr. Daniel Knowles, coming to you at an altitude of 5,280 feet. I want to first thank everyone who tunes in and on iTunes or Stitcher or Facebook or YouTube or one of the many other podcast channels that this is released around the world to. And also want to say, while you're there and listening, hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. Our intention is to bring great material to help you impact more lives. And of course, clear your calendar to join us August 16th to 19th in the Mile High City at our annual Mile High Chiropractic Movement event. We look forward to seeing you there. You can register at www.milehighchiro.org. So, I am really excited to introduce our guest, especially after finding out he has New York roots like me, which always makes me happy. And he is one of what I refer to as the true sages in our profession. And, you know, being around many people in chiropractic for many years, Dr. Stew Bittman has had a great road in chiropractic, and he has so much wisdom to share. There's a place where a person really has gained so much that you just want to listen to what they have to say, because you know it's not something somebody spouting off something. It's real, true, authentic experience. So I'm grateful to have on our episode here Dr. Stew Bittman.
Oh, thank you, Danny. That was beautiful. Thank you.
Well,
I was just pondering what my wife would think about the sage.
Well, being that she's from Brooklyn, as I just found out, you know, we can leave that to our imagination. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit. First off, I now know that you hail from Queens, New York, originally. Tell us how you found your way to chiropractic.
Well, I moved to Lake Tahoe when I was 22 or 23. That was a long time ago. I'm not going to tell you exactly. 1979, so those of you who can do quick math. Worked in the casinos here for a few years. That's what I decided to do with my Bachelor of Science degree at the time. And hurt myself on the job, started to see a chiropractor. I had some knowledge of chiropractic only from the perspective of back pain, because my dad would go to a chiropractor when his back went out. Mm-hmm. So it seemed like something I should do. And anyway, I got very excited about what he was doing, even though it wouldn't excite me now. It was very mechanistic and stuff, but I was intrigued, and one day he just suggested that I go to school, because I kind of had a background in biology, physiology, and I said, yeah, you know, I wasn't planning on making slot machines my career for my life, so decided to go to chiropractic school. That was my beginning.
Okay, and where did you end up going?
Well, I ended up to LACC.
Yeah.
Actually, I went to CMCC for 1 year. My wife and I couldn't find employment, so we kind of had to bail out of Canada. We went back to California, and I went to LACC and graduated as the valedictorian, and I had a perfect 4.0, and I had like perfect scores on my national boards, part 1, all 6 of them. I was nauseating and very unpopular in my class, as you probably can imagine. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that was the beginning of my road that I had to unlearn a lot of, because so I graduated in '86. By 1989, I realized I needed some help, because I had no idea what I was supposed to do. I would literally like get nauseous and almost throw up when a new patient was coming in, because you know, there was so much incongruence. There was just this huge hole in my heart about what I was supposed to be doing and why. Even though I obviously was very good at what they taught me,
right?
At least So anyway, somebody said,
but what they taught you may not have been, it doesn't necessarily serve you or them, as we all know. So getting that, you've had a long road since then in chiropractic. Can you summarize it and how you ended up finding the big idea?
yeah, it was to summarize it, like 7 years after I graduated, I was doing a box on the wall, spending a couple of minutes with people, essentially upper cervical, what I would consider as far away from how I started as possible, when I was spending 20 minutes or 30 minutes and chasing down every symptom known to man. And you know what? I can't even tell you what I did for 20 or 30 minutes. I wish I had films, because I really have no idea. But anyway, yes, I went the full gamut in a pretty short period of time. With various amazing events over the course of that 7 or 8 years that, were milestones.
Got it.
Like going on mission trips. That was big for me. But, even going on a mission trip, the first 3 years I was in practice would have been an incomprehensible idea. Like, why? What would that have been about? So I'm sure I'm skipping a lot of points and it's hard to remember, but I can remember like some of the big things that happened along the way.
Well, let's talk about some of the big fun things. So
Okay.
let's start with your influences. Who or what were your biggest influences in chiropractic?
I have to say my first biggest influence was probably Jim Parker, who first 2 times I went to Parker seminars could barely understand a word he was saying, 'cause it was like Sid Williams too. It took me 2 or 3 times to get the accent, kind of thing.
Right.
But so he started to open me up as far as just life and something bigger than science, and that was eye-opening for me. But it was actually a guy named Dean Black.
Yeah.
Who used to speak at Parker seminars and actually taught at Parker College for a while. He was not a chiropractor.
Yes, yeah, I remember him.
PhD, and I guess he gave a talk that was my first introduction to quantum physics, I would imagine. And it really struck me. In fact, I'm in the front row, which was not my style at all, crying at this kind of dry quantum physics lecture. The only reason I was crying is because I realized in that moment that everything my belief system had been built on was kind of like bullshit and changed and wasn't real, and no wonder I had this hole in my chest. So he finally said something that I could sink my teeth into, and from that point on, so essentially I left that room and walked into Sigafus's room, who I had heard speak once before but walked out on him because he was, again, speaking a foreign language to what I was ready to accept. And apparently he changed every word of his talk, because all of a sudden I'm soaking it up and loving it. Of course, we know he didn't change a word, but I changed.
Right.
So Sigafus was my biggest influence, is my biggest influence. I traveled with Sigafus for 15 years and taught at the gathering with him for 15 years, and traveled the world, where I started speaking internationally because of him. And I probably heard him speak hundreds and hundreds of times live.
Right.
Not to mention his tapes.
Right.
So he was the hugest, but also Reggie and Fred Barge through his books, and Dick Santo, of course, from the gathering as well, was a huge teacher for me. So yeah, they all had their influence, and all their words still come through me.
Got it. Well, and as they need to, because we have a future generation that needs some sage advice for sure. And with that, I want to step backwards a little bit, something you said earlier. So where was the transition that inspired you to go from where you were the way you were practicing to box on the wall?
Well, so I heard Dean Black created a huge opening for me, a vacuum really, because all I knew was what I was doing, and what I believed wasn't really true for me. So it was Sigafus that kind of filled in the gaps. So that was a process that went on for a few years, and I read every philosophy book I could get my hands on, and went to every seminar I could get myself to. But it was essentially the mission trips that were the major factor in me deciding to do the box on the wall. I mean, I'd heard Reggie talk about the box. I loved the idea for a long time, but I didn't do it until it was something I had to do.
Got it. Got it.
And it was mostly the mission trips and serving people with no language and no attachments to outcome and no way of following up and spending, 10 seconds with people. And, the few things we heard about with people getting up out of wheelchairs or deaf children getting their hearing restored. We did hear some miracle things, but for the most part, it wasn't even about that. It was just about, it was that loving, serving, and giving thing that I'd heard about and loved the idea of, but never really experienced in my life until that moment when to strip down chiropractic to its purest, simplest essence and to see how much better it worked, not only for the people we adjusted, but for me.
Right.
I decided I had to do something in my practice to allow me to help me stay in that same kind of consciousness.
Right.
And the box was, my idea for how to do that.
Yep. Yep. And you said something really important. You didn't do it until you had to, that you didn't have another choice, that you knew that was.
Well, I didn't want to do it because I didn't like asking for money,
right,
and
right.
which I didn't, but I didn't want to do the box to escape, my responsibilities in the law of exchange and stuff. I didn't think that was a good idea. And, people ask me all the time, do you think I should do the box? And my immediate answer is no. And they say, why do you say no? I said, because you're asking me. If you have to ask me, then I'm going to say no,
Yeah.
Because everybody in my life told me pretty much not to do it, including Sigafus and my mother and all those other important people in my life thought I was crazy. But I had gotten to the point where, again, it was just something I could not do.
Got it. What's your involvement? Now, you've been out of practice for 8 years, I think, if that's right. Correct me if I'm wrong. What's your involvement in the chiropractic world now, being retired from practice for a while?
I'm still speaking, and I'm still coaching, and I'm still teaching a workshop called Chiropractic from the Heart.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly overseas, because for whatever reason, that's where my market has been. I think about Jesus Christ, and he wasn't popular in his hometown either. So I realize I'm in good company. So for whatever reason, I'm very, I do most of my stuff in Europe and actually now Australia, and I'm probably going to Singapore this April. So I just keep going further away for some reason.
Yeah.
I would love to pull it back closer to home. Too, but that's an intention I'm putting.
Well, above, down, inside out. For some reason, the forces are going where they're going. What do you miss from practice?
I miss the babies.
Oh.
I miss the babies of all ages, but particularly the young ones. I miss the babies. I miss. You know what? I don't miss really like the business end of it. Not that my business was very businesslike towards the end, but mostly the babies and my interactions with people and laying my hands on people, which I still do a little bit. Don't tell anybody. Mm-hmm. But that's about it. I feel like I'm still involved and still serving people through the people I coach and inspire and am a sage for. I'm picking up that word. I like it.
It's a good word. Well, and one of the things that we do in art and teaching is helping people understand what voice you're speaking from. And there can be an educator, you could be a mentor, you could be a coach, you could be a friend. And those all have different voices, and a sage is yet another voice. So, and depending on where you're talking from and where the person is, you may need to adapt a different voice for them to hear you, depending on your audience and what you embody the most, also to be authentically you. And where you are, you'll attract different people. Some people might need a mentor, and other people may need a sage for where they are. So, with that. being around the chiropractic world, and I've been around the chiropractic world just a little bit shorter than you, not much though, because as a kid I got exposed to chiropractic when my mom was in chiropractic school. So just a couple of years after, just a little bit. Just when did you go to chiropractic school?
Started in '82, graduated in '86.
Yeah, so that's right around the time.
1982.
Yeah, right around the time when I first got my exposure to chiropractic myself. And so in that time frame, since we can go further back, but since that early 80s, late 70s time, there's been some pretty significant shifts in the chiropractic world. What are your impressions on the current state of chiropractic?
I'm excited. I'm inspired. Seems like every day I hear about another philosophy group or philosophy-based seminars like yours. I mean, they were back in the day. There were only a couple,
right?
And a lot of those sort of almost died out.
Right.
Had some very lean years when everybody went to sort of their own system or their guru or their, I think it's incredibly inspiring to see all the seminars that have emerged that, for people to come to and have an opportunity to rub elbows with people of like mind, of like heart. A lot of things haven't changed, I have to say. I mean, we still have an incredible tendency to, when things get hard, to circle the wagons and shoot in. We still, in my humble opinion, are way too... We're not very nice to each other.
Yeah.
We seem to think that we can make ourselves more right by making other people more wrong. That's not only in our own profession, but with other professions. And I understand the roots of a lot of that, but with social media and stuff, it obviously gives us greater opportunity to hate each other more and express it. And to me, that's always has been. And it's still a very sad thing. I don't think we have to make anybody wrong to feel right about what we're doing. And there's enough right and simple about chiropractic without getting hung up on how we do it. And anyway, I could go on a long time about that. But
it's an interesting thing when you have a profession that's based on connection, community, healing, trust. Those are some of the, other than, spouting off 33 principles, those are like values that are the center of those principles. The community, the body, experiencing connection with the world and yourself and the universe and trusting life. I mean, your major premise to me is basically a message of trust life, and then when you see people do something and act or behave in a way that's contradictory to it, it's significant.
Yeah, and I recognize the behavior in myself because when I first made my transition, I was what's the term? A hate straight.
Right.
And I observed that with people who quit smoking or the most vehement anti-smokers. So there's human nature involved, and yet you're right. It's not, to me, it's not principled to not allow people the freedom to make their own mistakes. Well, to make their own choices. And I realized that I, at one time, would have hated who I was earlier, because I went through all those stages myself. And if people just like shut down to me and didn't, and maybe I never would have had the opportunity to grow in what I've come to love and learn. So I wonder how many chiropractors there are out there who just never been exposed to it, anyway.
Well, and that goes back to something that I want to ask, because this is just coming up as we're talking about this, which is for someone with your wisdom, how much is this phrase vital for chiropractors? The phrase being, "Physician, heal thyself."
It's certainly a chiropractic idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
Every Sunday, because I'm involved in a ministry now, and it's a unity ministry, and we sing the peace song at the end, which is "Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me." Mm-hmm. And I don't think we have more of a responsibility as chiropractors to be the change we wish to see in the world, to embody those values that we teach, and we get frustrated that people don't get.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Well, I've always thought that chiropractic practice in multi levels, from philosophy to art to science, is also in business. All those areas, it becomes a reflection of yourself. You know, how successful and what happens in your practice, and using the many different terms of success, it goes back to, like, you know, reflecting on yourself and where you're at. And it's a place of refining you that actually helps the practice grow and you grow, and you be able to grow other people.
And what a beautiful thing about our profession, that we get to practice according to our values and in the ways that are authentic for us.
Right.
You know? So again, if somebody else's way doesn't meet that, I mean, I would like to think my first reaction doesn't have to be they're wrong and
Right.
and stupid, you know, or stupid, or
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Anyway.
So tell me about your experience. I've never done a mission trip. I know people have done dozens of them. I do plenty of other chiropractic things. Tell us some experiences and why you think mission trips are a value, or maybe a great experience you had on one.
Well, all my missions have been in Central America. I've been on the Panama missions, which I guess most people have heard about. I went the first 4 times, so 97 through 99.
Wow.
I mean, the second day we were there, we were working in a special school in Panama City for thousands of, I don't even know what was wrong with most of the kids, but one of the kids got their hearing restored. This was the second day we were in Panama, and you know what was interesting, Sigafus was with us, and he was the only one of the 18 of us that had ever seen that in their office before. That was kind of a huge revelation for me. Why are we, you know, the combined 100 years of experience we had, we're in Panama one day and we see something we had never seen before. You know, so it started out this whole opening of how we were different things. You know, the principle is the principle, and it certainly can happen in our office. So that was, you know, the fact that we adjusted 50,000 people in 5 days, and the people that, you know, they came out of the woodwork and they were there, you know, 5,000 people waiting for us. I mean, every moment was an amazing experience, but mostly it was a week of just surrendering to the chiropractic principle and letting enate work through me. And I was adjusting people before I even put my hands on them. I mean, like, literally we would hear people getting adjusted before we even did it, and remote control adjusting. You have to go to Panama for, I guess. But the whole point after like 2 of these trips was that the real mission was in my office. The reason I think mission trips are great is because they train you to the possibilities of, you know, what could be when you let go of all the bullshit and all the things that don't really matter, and the things that are false responsibilities on our part, like, you know, what's going to happen after we adjust them, for instance. Yep. You know, so we're stripped of that mental attachment stuff, because, you know, we can't ask the people and we may not see them again, and so it's just an amazing training is the best word I can come with, a heart opening, to give yourself the opportunity to see what's possible without, you know, like selling and convincing and the stuff we feel like we have to get into because we live under a brain. Right. And, you know, and this is the stuff we feel is important or urgent anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so it sounds like you're a big fan of them and would recommend people still go to them.
Yeah, I mean, I got to the point where I didn't really feel I needed it anymore. I just recently went back because the Panama missions got resurrected. Mm-hmm. We went back this March after, I think the last time they went was 2008. Wow. I went to kind of hold the spiritual space that was there for the original ones when Sigafus and Dick Santo were involved. Mm-hmm. I didn't really feel like I needed to adjust thousands and thousands of people per second. Yeah. Anymore, but yeah. So I don't know. Some people might go once and get what they need. Some people, it wouldn't hurt. I tell you that it wouldn't hurt to have an experience of that purity and that. Yeah, you know, just to see where the magic really comes from.
Well, and so that's an important thing. We have that you're kind of skirting on, which is that our world is well, we can say crazy. We have a crazy world we're living in. Where do you see chiropractic and chiropractors' role in this world today?
Well, I think it has a huge world, a huge place. We don't have documentation, but supposedly the fourth time or the fifth time we went to Panama, the mayor of Panama City gave the key to the city to the chiropractors and claimed that the crime rate in Panama City had gone down steadily over the past 2 years over the course of these missions. Obviously it's not a detailed study, but I certainly believe BJ when I don't have to believe BJ. In my experience, I saw people making different choices all the time through chiropractic care, more principled choices, more authentic choices based on people's core values. And I don't believe that many people have core values that involve hate and violence and that kind of stuff. So I think we have a huge role. But to go back to something we talked about before, it begins with each of us. I always felt it was one of my most important responsibilities was to continue to resonate at least as high a frequency as the people that came to see me, which involved me doing my spiritual practice or my work or whatever, to embody those values and those principles. So it was more than me just talking to people. It's like, Danny, you have kids. They don't hear anything you say. Who you are speaks so loudly they can't hear anything you say. So, I feel it's the same way with our influence in the world. We have to be that. We have to, and we're in such a unique position to share that with people and for people to grasp that vision. If we're living it, I think it's just going to happen that much more smoothly and quickly. So, yeah. So, not that our responsibility is to fix the world. Maybe our responsibility is to hold a vision of what's possible for it, just like we do with people.
Right.
I think it's really important, and Dickie Santo taught me this, to see people as already whole, already whole and healed when they come in. And that's obviously a chiropractic idea too. We can't improve on innate. We're not creating the healing. We're just facilitating the removal of interference. So again, it's the same thing with the world. If I'm looking at the world as wounded or bad or stuff, then I already have 2 strikes against me in my ability to do anything for it. So I'm going to hold a vision of what's possible. I think innate's on the job all over this world, and I think innate is always trying to express more love and connection. And so let's keep removing interference in ourselves so we can remove as much interference in other people and continue to see this world change.
And with that, since you do a lot of help with mentoring people in different arenas, both in and out of chiropractic, what do you feel is helpful for a chiropractor getting out of school with probably even less chiropractic principle than you described you learned? Most likely they probably have even less, many of them, and they're uncertain. They're sitting in their office with, debt and with their situation. What do you recommend they do to find their way?
Well, develop first of all a willingness to change and an intention to change and grow. And not be too stuck. Because you know what? Even though I knew that what I believed and felt were not really authentic for me, or certainly not the whole story, I was still very resistant to change because I'd spent all this money and time to learn something. So so I guess my first advice would be not to get too attached to where you are, and know that anybody who's been in practice for any length of time, I'm sure, has changed, has grown, has evolved. So that's going to happen. So, find a good influence, find a good teacher, find a good coach. If you were willing to change, do what I did, start reading, start podcasts. Did not exist, when I got out of school, but there's millions of them now. If you're interested, expose yourself to it with an open mind, and then know that everything you need to change is within you. That's a chiropractic idea. Know that you are already more than enough. that you may be starving now, but it's not necessarily an indication of the world or that you're doing something wrong. It's maybe you just haven't gotten in touch totally or embodied what's important for you. So once you do that, I mean, we have such a beautiful, simple thing to serve people with that's life-changing and life-altering. If we could just get ourselves out of the way, people are going to want it. There's, as Sisyphus used to say, there's millions of people within a half a mile of you that are dying for what you have.
Yeah.
So, so get yourself out of the way and spread the word. That's what you're there for. And, then get ready to have people knock down the doors. It's just been my experience. I don't know if it answered your question, but that's been my experience.
Absolutely. And part of that, you hit a phrase that's important. It's one that's I focus, I'm aware of, and conscious of my ebb and flow with it, which is that sense of whether you're enough or not. People thinking they're not enough, or I couldn't do that. Hey, Stu could do that, but I couldn't. Or, Danny could do that, but I couldn't. And, well, whatever it might be. How do you, let's talk about that, whether a person feels like they're not enough or more than enough.
Yeah, which of course comes from comparing ourselves to other people, right? Or
right.
Comparing ourselves to who we think we should be or where we think we should be. So, I work with people. We work on that a lot. I'm like, every time you have a thought of comparing yourself to somebody. Okay, so I'm going to use an example. Sisyphus. A lot of people used to compare themselves to Sisyphus.
Right.
Very few people chiropractically, as far as numbers or size of practice, are not going to come up short in that comparison.
Right.
However, I would ask them to consider: do we know that these people that we put up on pedestals are even happy with what they have?
Right.
Do we know what's going through their mind when they're trying to go to sleep at night?
Right.
Do we know what it took for them? With Sisyphus, it took losing a 19-year-old baby. That was one of the milestones in his life. I would honestly and very, very easily tell you I don't want that in my life. I'd rather do it gently and consciously and intentionally and maybe slowly. So anyway, there are tools I use when I start to compare myself to other people, and these are some of them. Instead of comparing myself to others or to some idea of where I should be, why don't I just affirm in that moment that I am more than enough?
Uh-huh.
I'm more than enough because innate intelligence is my truest essence. And so, did innate have a bad day when innate created me, or when recreates me? No, it's rather arrogant to think I'm not enough.
Right.
And then as far as coming up, on the positive end, when I compare myself to other people, my biggest mantra is just like me.
Right.
Just like me. I don't know about you, Danny, but when I judge people, it takes usually about 3 milliseconds at this point to realize when I have done exactly the same thing in some way, shape, or form, maybe not to the degree, but just like me. We all come up short sometimes. We all have the same potential for greatness. We all forget that. We've all had joy. We've all had despair and sorrow. We've all made shitty choices. Excuse my language. Let's get on with it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because no matter what, regardless of all that stuff, we can start now to start living according to our values, and we can't do that as long as we're comparing ourselves to other people. It's just paralyzing. So,
and also I found a thing that I've adopted recently, which is that you could feel like you're not enough, and you can step up anyway.
Absolutely. Mother Teresa, according to her diaries, didn't feel like she was deserving.
Right.
Had doubts every day of her life, but she went out there anyway.
Right.
I would like to think she had a lot of moments of fulfillment and
right.
and feeling good about what she was doing. Otherwise, I would question why she was doing it. So that's another part of it. My advice to people is start acknowledging the good stuff you're already doing and the good stuff you've done, and the fact that you show up every day, even though sometimes it's hard, and
Right.
the fact that you show up every day, even though sometimes you probably question why you're showing up every day.
Right.
And you know, so all these things are really, really cool.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
really, really good reasons to feel good about ourselves. You know, I tried the approach of if I felt bad enough about myself, I would eventually feel good about myself.
Mhm.
But after many years of trying that, it just never happened.
Got it. Yeah.
So I've adopted more of a strategy of, you know, really acknowledging those moments, you know, where I am proud of myself, or I am grateful for something I did, or I am, you know, I make a good choice, or I just show up.
Right.
You know, I show up even though I didn't.
Right.
And that's made a huge difference. I really feel I have a lot more moments where I can honestly say, you know, God, if you want to take me right now, it's okay, because this has been great and it's more than enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's a good feeling. Not that I'm making a request.
Well, and you know, something that I think that I see also shifting the area we're talking about, but something I heard you say about being happy about where chiropractic is and seeing different programs pop up. You know, I think my impression, and I'd like your feedback, is that chiropractic has gone through a dark ages, and that dark ages has been the insurance time, and I think that dark ages is coming to an end. I'm hoping, and I think that's why there's so much flailing around. When someone's drowning, they flail around, and that's why I think there's so much flailing around relative to expanding scope. It's about that there's a lack because we can't get money through insurance, so we need to flail around and try to find something else we can do to make money, whatever it might be, rather than knowing that the adjustment's more than enough, right? And the greatest value, most valuable thing we have to offer as a chiropractor.
Right.
And I think that because that transition is happening, I personally think that the profession is moving into a period or a renaissance or a rebirth or in terms of that. And it may, you know, there may be some professional political challenges, but I think that I'm seeing more and more people that are new grads that even though they didn't learn chiropractic in school, they know they have to share the adjustment and subluxation as center of what they do.
I totally agree, and I think that's what's behind this resurgence in philosophy groups. Yeah, I see the same thing in Europe. The students, even from the schools that are not what we consider to be the vitalistic schools, you know, there's a huge hunger for philosophy. There's an openness. Yes, I agree, and I think there's also we seem to be a lot closer to understanding, you know, what we're doing and how it works and stuff.
Right.
Which I think is part of that, which is, you know, important. It's for our own self-worth and stuff like that. And in this world today. So yeah, I agree with you. I think you know, the time has always been right for us, but maybe enough factors have come into play now with, you know, with what we can't do anymore because of the insurance situation. And so it's going to maybe, force us to get back to principle and get back to ways of explaining principle that are simple and authentic. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a very exciting time.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you can't bill other stuff, you got to learn to talk about chiropractic and communicate the value of it and adjust people.
Yeah.
You know, and
and similarly, it's gonna force us to own it and embody it, because you know what I found out in Panama was it doesn't require us to say a lot.
Right.
But it does require us to own a lot and to be projecting that a lot and to get it ourselves. People ask me, what about all these people that don't get it? And my answer is, when I got it, they got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's so very true. It's the more certain you are, that speaks volumes more than anything else. And as you said, who you are speaks so loud they don't hear what you're saying. So living that is vital, and that's why people, connecting with people like you is very helpful. And on that note, how do people connect with you more if they'd like to?
Well, I'm easy to find. I'm on Facebook, Stew Bittman. I'm quite the tech wizard too. I just last week figured out how the toaster worked.
There you go.
I'm on a roll. I have a website, bittmanbliss.com.
Good.
Email on there. Those are easy ways to find me.
Good. Well,
Do we have time for a quick story?
Yeah, go for a story. I like a story.
Because it just occurred to me, it was not only a defining moment for me, but it was also an answer to your question about our role in the world.
Yeah.
And it's a story that I tell at every talk. So
go for it.
If you ever hear me talk, you're going to probably hear it again. But anyway, there was a gentleman that for 2 months complained to me about his shoulder. And I never touched his shoulder. And I told him every single time he came in why I didn't touch his shoulder. And this would always seem to satisfy him about the intention behind what I was doing. Until the next time he came in and he would ask me about his shoulder again. I got a little tired of saying, I don't know about your shoulder, and then explaining. So I also got tired of him bringing his little 5-year-old daughter with him to the office every single time and not letting me check her and having every excuse. So I decided actually to ask him to leave. I just thought he'd be better off somewhere else where they fix shoulders, and it didn't bug people about their kids being checked.
Right.
And but for some reason he kept coming. Right. So I went home and I actually rehearsed this little speech, because prior to that, people, when they wanted to leave, they left. They took care of it themselves. So anyway, it's getting long. So I essentially, he denied anything had changed, and he in his life or in his body in 2 months. So I got the little hit to say, ask her, which was to ask his daughter, which I did. I called her into the room and I said, Emma, have you noticed anything different about your dad in these 2 months? And she looked at me, she started to cry, and she finally caught her breath and said, yeah, he's not beating on me anymore. So that was it's a good time. So that was a huge, obviously, a huge moment for me. Very proud moment for me, and a very, a living example of the answer to the question of what kind of effect we can have on the world. I mean, I didn't know he was beating on his kid. I don't have a beating on your kid adjustment. I just really believe that Enate made a really good choice in what to work on, which is what I used to tell a guy, hang in there. Maybe Enate's working on something else, and apparently it was, because I really feel like he got exactly what he needed, for his highest good and to be the person he could be, So obviously, since that happened without any of my knowledge or advice or my sage wisdom, I feel it's obviously an example of the power that we have in our hands, and in our heart and in our intention. The best thing I did was just hold a vision of what was possible for this guy.
Right. Yeah.
And allowed him to step into it.
Well, that's something we often say in our office, is remember to see the inner champion.
Beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I like.
Yeah.
I would steal that from you if I was still.
Well, no, and I'm grateful for who you are and what you do, and I really want more people to connect with you. We're going to put that information and those links in the show notes so people can find them on the podcast when this comes out in audio and video form and so on, so that people can find you real easy. And I'm grateful you took your time out of your day to be with us and to share some Stew Bittman sage advice, some sage wisdom. So Stew, I'm trying to come up with a saying there on the spot, like Stew's sage advice or something.
I like it. SSA
or SSW, Stew's sage wisdom.
I'll keep working on that.
Ask your wife what she thinks.
I will. Yeah. You may have to edit this, but I remember Wayne Dyer saying his wife asked him one time, "How come you show the whole world your holiness, and you show me your assholiness?"
Yeah, I've heard.
So my wife might. Anyway, enough of that. My wife loves me very much and thinks highly of me.
Good.
I'll
Awesome.
leave it at that.
Well, I'm grateful again, grateful to have you on the Mile High episode. This will be coming out very shortly, most likely tomorrow, the 16th. And I know people are going to get a lot out of it, and I look forward to people connecting with you more too. So thank you so much for taking your time. And everybody who's listening, remember, clear that calendar. I got a calendar right over there. Put on it Mile High, August 16th to 19th, and make sure you're there, because we're really, shifting. We're creating a new home for chiropractic in the center of the country to emanate the ADIO message outward, and keep changing spines and lives and minds with chiropractic, because we certainly need more people on more tables more often than currently if we're going to impact the world for the better. So thank you, Dr. Stew. Thank you everybody here. Make sure you hit subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you at Mile High in August, www.milehighchiro.org. Like our page on Facebook, www.facebook.com/Mile High Chiro.